Welcome to the High Performance Interviews. Today I am joined by Melinda Van Fleet, all the way from the Florida Keys in America. Welcome, Melinda.
Oh, thank you, Lucy, for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
It's fantastic to have you, and I'm really looking forward to our chat together today. So, before we get started, I would love to introduce you to our audience and share a little bit about your background. Melinda is a sought after, intuitive, energetic business and leadership mentor, coach, and consultant who helps her clients with what they can't see so that they can experience fast results. Melinda and her husband, Captain Ryan, moved to the Florida Keys in 2009 after they were both laid off at the same time. Melinda has an unparalleled story of manifestation combined with a lot of hard work. In addition to her coaching business and being the wizard behind the curtain for Good Karma sports fishing and coaching, she is a 7D energy practitioner, a human design coach, professional speaker, and host of Success Codes podcasts, and a freelance writer of two best-selling books. So, with that amazing accolade, all those amazing accolades, Melinda, I would love you to share about your story because I know it's going to fascinate our audience. So, I'm going to hand over to you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I have always been a high performer. And so I love that you invited me to be a guest on your podcast. I think it's really important, though, that people learn about themselves and operate within their own system of performance. So my background is 16 years in the corporate world with very large retailers like Target, Victoria's Secret Store, Saks Fifth Avenue. And then I met my husband later in life in like my mid 30s. I manifested my husband. I wanted to meet someone that was taller, dark curly hair, and had a hobby because I was a workaholic and I didn't have a hobby. So I put that on my list, and sure as shit, I ended up meeting my husband on Match.com, and he had a hobby of fishing on the weekends. And he literally said to me, I don't know if I'll love anything more than fishing. So again, be careful what you wish for because now it is our business. And what ended up happening was shortly after we met, we both were laid off at the same time in 2009. And we were living in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we had been manifesting to move somewhere where it never ever snowed. And my husband could become a charter boat captain. And we used to lay on the bed, just like lay on top of the bed and play the sound machine. I did that intuitively and created this whole world, which we now live in, where it was green grass and palm trees and two little dogs. And my husband could go fishing all the time. And it ended up coming true. So here we are. We've been in the Florida Keys now for over 14 years, and we've had our main business, Good Karma Sport Fishing and Coaching, for over 12 years. By the time my husband got his hours and learned how to fish and all the things that you have to do legally to set up a business like this, it took a while. When we went through that process, we said someday when we get our shit together, we will help others. And now we both do that.
That's
Myself as
absolutely
a business coach and him as a fishing guide and coach. So yeah.
fantastic. And I want to know what the sound machine is.
Honestly, it's the little sound machines you can get here in the States. You can get like at Target or on Amazon or Walmart. And normally they're in the baby section. And they're just like a little round sound machine and they play the ocean sounds. So you can listen on your phone, but on your phone, you run the risk of, it ending or your phone battery dying. So just to have the little sound machine, because this was before, YouTube. This was before people were talking about manifestation. This was, way back when. So I did all of that intuitively. I just followed the guidance as a way to help my husband. He really struggled with his job and he loved to fish. So I just created this whole world, and we ended up, taking action towards it. And I think that's really important. Like we took the action towards it. Like it didn't just like magically pop here where we are like, oh, here we are. But we took the actions towards it. We followed the breadcrumbs and created
Yeah.
what we had intended.
And
So
isn't
yeah.
that is so important, because when people think of manifestation, it's not just about sitting around and dreaming, is it? You have to act on that and take some steps towards it. However sucky they might feel, it's taking the steps. So with the steps that you took from that manifestation with the sound machine, what were those steps that took you then to the Florida Keys? Why the Florida Keys? Was there some kind of guidance with that? Share more about that,
Yeah.
Melinda.
Yeah, so it's a combination of things, to be honest with you. First, I'll address the Florida Keys. So we knew like South Florida sounded good, and we were really fortunate at the time. My husband has an aunt, the uncle has now passed on, but they had a condo in Fort Myers. So we were able to just kind of leave everything behind in Minnesota and come down to Florida and stay there for a few weeks. We stayed there for about 3 weeks. So we were really, really lucky and blessed. And when we looked at South Florida, it was truly just a matter of process of elimination. We were like, where do we fit in? Like we're two, people in their mid-30s, like where do we fit in? And then also the Keys is a sport fishing capital of the world. So when we, got down here and we were like, okay, is it Boca? Is it Miami? Is it staying in Fort Myers? What is it? Is it Fort Lauderdale? My husband was like, I think the Keys is where the fishing's at. So we had never been here. We didn't have any jobs. We hardly had any money. We just had our unemployment from the state of Minnesota. And that was it. We didn't know anybody. We just came down here. So it's kind of a process of elimination in terms of like being here, but that's also very guided. It just makes sense when we look at it now.
Yeah.
And then just figuring things out. Like we just followed guidance as to different jobs and different things that we could do to kind of figure it out. And it took time. It took years to figure that out. And I think people really need to get grounded to that. And the fact that we are high performers. My husband's a high performer too. We are hard workers. We just knew that it would work itself out. Like we would keep trying different things along the way, and eventually like something would click. And it did. So my husband was able to start his business, and then I had started a sales business prior and was able to use the income from that business to fund Good Karma Sport Fishing. So that was a big part of it too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's an understanding that it does take time. Some things just show up, and that's great. But
Yeah.
for the long term, understanding that it takes time and keep on taking those actions is really important. I love that story. I love that story. When you shared it with me before, I was like, yeah, what such a great story. And so one of the things I'd love to dive into deeper with you today, because this is something I've not heard of before, is being a human design practitioner. Now, what is that, Melinda? How does that work?
Yes. And it's so incredible and amazing to me. So I was so excited that you wanted to talk about this so I could share about it more, because as much as I'm entrenched in it, and I know so many other coaches that also coach on it, like most people don't know what it is. So if you're out there in the audience and you've never heard of human design, don't feel bad. It's actually something that I think is just gaining more and more popularity. Well, what human design is the simplest way I like to explain it is a spiritually based personal assessment system. So if you are someone, let's say you're in the business world and you've heard of DISCs or HBDI or Myers-Briggs, any of those, those are filled out by us with our brain, like we answer questions. This is more in alignment with getting like an astrology reading. It's just based on your birthday. And what it is it's a system that is based on Kabbalah, the I Ching, astrology, and chakras. And it was downloaded to a man named Ra Uru Hu in 1987 in Spain. He has since passed. He passed in 2011. And it's just this incredible way to really understand about yourself, where your strengths are, where you're open to learn, like that there's nothing like bad about you. You don't have like a weakness. It's just considered open to learn. And then when you understand that we're all different, which I think is such a huge piece of this, then it just brings on this whole other level of compassion and understanding for your neighbor, right? Your partner, your spouse, a loved one, a coworker. And I use this actually a lot with teams, with teamworks. So if there's a leader out there who's very open to this type of information, and there's actually nothing like really weird about it. It's just based on your birthday. And it's really just common knowledge type things and just understanding your strengths and where you're open to learn, then it's a really effective tool. But in regards to what you and I originally were talking about, is one of the aspects of human design that you can easily find information about on the internet is your type. And there's 5 types. One is generator, which is the majority of the population. One is manifesting generator. One is manifestor, one's projector, and one's reflector. And what my journey particularly is I have always been called the Energizer Bunny. And actually, people would make comments to me about, oh, you work so hard and you get up so early and you're always working, and it would kind of make me feel bad. So I had like the opposite of what some people deal with like overwhelm and stress. I don't tend to get overwhelmed and stressed, and I'm able to manage it if I do. So my whole life up until I heard about human design, which was in 2020, so not even that long ago, I dealt with a lot of mind loops and overthinking in terms of people judging me for being a high performer.
Yeah.
And I had a coach, and she wasn't a human design coach like me, but she knew of human design, and she knew enough to tell me, go pull your chart and see what you are. And I did. And she said, oh, this makes sense. You're a generator. You're just someone who you thrive off of working. You love to work. That's your purpose. You're a great person to get shit done. And when you're done for the day, you're really good at just being like pencils down. Like you don't tend to get stressed out or overwhelmed or put yourself into that one of those situations that other people end up doing, like burnout. And it was just like this biggest weight off my shoulders that I was like, oh gosh, I'm just normal. I'm
I'm
Melinda.
okay. Yeah. I'm not weird.
I'm not weird. I'm not a weirdo. I mean, people literally like, I actually have a picture in my gallery on my phone of an Energizer Bunny because people were like calling me that. And I was like, maybe I'll use that for content. So sometimes I do. I use that for content, this story,
Yeah.
because it can be triggering, if other people are judging you because you're not like them and suffering from burnout, and then they see you and there's this whole other like loop that can happen. And at the end of the day, we're all just built differently, and understanding how you are and how you operate best is really the key to success.
Yeah. Rather than the comparison thing. Well, I'm like this. Why are you like that? That can't be right. And then you said also you can go and pull that chart from the internet. So you can find out the basics, Melinda, just from share a little bit more about that. So if somebody's going, oh, I
Yes.
wonder what I am, they can go
Yes.
somewhere to do that.
Yeah, and I truly hope people do. So just off the top of my head, you can easily go to my website, melindavanfleet.com, just my name, and I have a whole page on human design. And on that page, I linked the free website, Human Design America, and you just click on that link and it'll take you to their site, and you can pull your chart for free and see what you are. So you'll be able to easily find on like YouTube, or you can buy some books on Amazon about, your type and your profile are pretty much the standard that people talk about the most. And then after that, like to dig into like your gates and channels, which I think is where the magic is, that would likely require a reading.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
just the basic information, have at it. Like everyone should do it. I highly
Yeah.
recommend it.
Yes.
So
And so I was going to ask you, so people can get that basic information because there's so much out there on the internet, right? But why would then somebody come to somebody like yourself as a human design practitioner once they understand what they are and how that works? would they come to you because they're still having challenges? What was the reason they would come and see someone like yourself, Melinda?
Yeah, great question. Because it's taking it to the next level. So if you're like, gosh, this makes sense to me, and I really want to dive deeper and really understand. So when you pull your chart, you'll see that there's 9 centers. So explaining that is really important. And then there's gates and channels. So understanding the gates and channels and the circuitry, and whether it's a subconscious or a conscious, like there's a lot of other dynamics within the body graph. So when someone pulls it, they'll go, oh gosh, and they might be a little overwhelmed. I know I first was like, oh gosh, what's all this? Right. And then I started to learn, and I went to class, and I really dove in, and I bought some amazing books that are helpful. But it was really important for me to go to class and really start to understand, and then really start to embody it and be able to be like, oh, this person talks a lot. I don't talk a lot. They probably have more gates and channels in their throat center. And just like that awareness, instead of like judging or being irritated, our humanness takes us to like all these other places. Let's be honest. Most people don't want to talk about that, but it's just true. And, it really helps alleviate that energy. It just does. When you could be like, oh, I'm built this way, that person's likely built that way. Even if you can't pull their chart, it's just like a basic understanding of yourself.
Yeah.
And there's so much to it. And my chart also has a lot of gates and channels about will and intuition. That makes sense to me. I'm highly intuitive, and I have a very strong driving force. Like I'm able to stay the course on something, even if it looks like the sky is falling, I can still stay the course. And some people don't have that. So they sign up to work with coaches, or they buy programs or Facebook Lives or courses, and then they don't even do it. They don't even understand that maybe that's just not part of their chart, and maybe they have some other strengths. And it doesn't mean that they can't work on those things. That's where it's called open to learn. But it may be just a more challenging road for them, right? So instead of beating themselves up that they can't get there as fast as someone else, let's look at your chart and see what's going to be an easier way for you to operate.
That makes so much sense, because I know, I mean, a lot of women actually that do beat why can't I be more like you? Or why can't I be more like that person? It doesn't seem to make sense to them why they are like they are, and why they keep making the choices over and over again that they make when they know it's not the right thing, even if they are intuitive. So something like this, and then working with a practitioner, is really going to help them to overcome that. So if you're out there in the audience thinking, yep, sounds like something I need to do because I've got those patterns going over and over and over, we will be putting Melinda's details in the description box below. So do go down and have a look at that. So for yourself, I know you also work with the peak performance side because you're a peak performer, Melinda. So what protocols do you have in place? I know you said you can just shut off, put your pens down, that's it. So just talk a little bit more around that side of things, because I know some peak performers who don't feel they should shut off. They just have to keep going, going, going until they drop, sleep, get up, start again.
So you can be a peak performer in human design and not be a generator. You could be like a manifesting generator, where it's part manifesting, which is, I'll explain that in a second, and part generator. And the manifesting aspect doesn't mean that you manifest faster. It's just that you're more, let's say, visionary, and you may have more ideas, right? So you have the idea capability, let's say, more than someone else, and you're a good worker. My husband is a manifesting generator. I've worked with so many manifesting generators as a coach, and I'm sure I know lots of manifesting generators, and they are highly driven. They're high performers, but they just don't have that innate skill to shut it off. So my husband, he actually has always been someone who has to take a nap. And, again, comments, my mom used to comment like, oh, you let your husband take a nap. And I was like, well, first of all, let him, he's a grown adult, like he can do what he wants. But when I learned that he was a manifesting generator, and it just helped his system get like a recharge just for like an hour and a half, like whatever, like it was great. And he came back like even stronger. It works for him.
Yes.
So if you have any type of idea that you feel is going to help you, stop listening to noise, just try it and see if it helps you. So I think that sometimes we get caught up in listening to someone talk like, to be an entrepreneur, you need to work 14-hour days. Well, if it doesn't work for you, please don't do that. So, and if you need to take a nap, take a damn nap.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
whatever. If you're a morning person, you're a morning person. If you're a night person, you're a night person. Like people try to be like me and get up at 4 a.m. I'm like, don't try to be like me. Do you. Like, do you. I think that's really important. As far as just some simple things, I live and die by my calendar. Like yes, I have it on Google, like, in the correct century, but I also use sticky notes. Like I detail every day on a sticky note by hour or by half hour, whatever I have going on. I write all the things I need to do. And that's my guiding force, as simple as that is. And you know what? If it looks like it's going to be too overwhelming of a day, I actually had that to this morning. I look to edit, like what can I edit? And I think sometimes we feel that in order to be a peak performer, and we are a peak performer, that we have to show up to everything. Honestly, if you think about it another way, to be a peak performer means you're really good at also setting boundaries or editing things or moving something out. And I move things around quite often. I just say, I'm sorry, I have to reschedule. And no one's ever nasty to me. It's just, they're like, okay, no worries. I kind of have a busy week too. Thank you. Like we
It's
all get
okay. Yeah.
it.
I
But
love,
we put these expectations on ourselves as peak performers. So,
yes. And I love the word you're using, editing. Just edit your day.
mhm,
Because if you can see it's got too full, yeah, just edit that little bit out and stick it somewhere else. I love
yes.
that. I love that. The visualization that gives me. It's like going into a video and editing. It's like that bit doesn't need to be there, out. So
Mhm.
let's
Yeah,
stick that somewhere else.
just edit it. We get in this whole loop of guilt. And then have you ever felt guilty for not feeling guilty?
No.
You might now recognize it now that I say it, but I had that a few summers ago where I was like taking a break and I wasn't guilty. Like I didn't feel guilty for doing that, but then I felt guilty for not feeling guilty. It was like a whole other swirl of mind shit that I was like, whoa. I have to lead myself through this one because no one talks about this. But yeah, we go through a lot, like to be as amazing as we are, right? So,
Truly. And drawing on something that you said before as well was not listening to the other stuff. And the other stuff can be in your head, and the other stuff can be other people, right? Or what is thought of as the normal thing to do. So shutting that out, and like you said, just be you. You do you. It doesn't necessarily work the way that I do it for you. It won't necessarily work for the way that you do it for me. So
Mhm,
you doing you is great advice, but sometimes people do need help with that,
mhm. Yes, they
understanding
do.
what the
Mhm.
you being you actually means to them,
Mhm. Mhm.
because they're so lost down a rabbit hole.
Mhm.
Have you
Yeah,
found
so
that
just
with your
having
coaching?
someone to talk, yeah, exactly. That's what I just think is mentorship. Like just having someone to be there to be like, okay, this is what's going on in my head, you know, and just be like, okay, no, you're good. We can reframe this, maybe look at this, but for the most part, just helping people realize that they're okay. I think is just so valuable nowadays.
Yeah, because there's so much pressure put on from social media as well as other people and the norm and understanding who you are, and that's really cool actually, because you're the only one there is.
Mhm.
And let's work with that. And people know really what they are. They just need to have it pulled out of them. They need their voice. They need to hear their voice saying it, right?
Mhm. Exactly, their own brilliance.
So before we come to the end, is there anything else you would like to share that you've got on your heart that you would like to share with our audience, Melinda?
Yeah, it came to my mind when we were just talking a second ago, and thank you for asking that. Another thing that's been kind of rampant on the internet, especially since COVID, I think that's kind of when it started, was just the comparison going on with, how do I put this? Like other coaches, but I'm not being negative against other coaches, but there's just a other narrative and way of teaching in terms of the feminine energy. And I think that has definitely caused some confusion. And I know I went through this a couple of years ago myself. So I want someone to know that if you're someone out there that's struggling with being a high performer, you're a high performer, you love what you do, you love showing up, you love working, whatever that is. And then you're like seeing all this other stuff online about feminine energy and taking a break all the time. There's so much content out there about that. If you're getting caught up in that, I was there, and you just again have to do you. So if you want to take a break and sit in the bathtub all day with rose petals, like do it, but don't feel like you have to do that. That's what I think is really important.
Love it. And it comes back to that, you do you.
Mhm.
So we've kind of gone full circle. It's been fascinating. I've loved learning more about human design. I am going to go on and pull my chart now, Melinda, because
You'll
I
have
think,
to let us know what it is.
yeah,
I
I
love
will,
it.
most definitely. Fantastic. So I'm sure our listeners have got fantastic value from this and are all fired up to find out more. There will be another video coming up on screen, so I'm going to see you over there. And thank you so much for joining us, Melinda. It's been awesome to have you on here today. And thank you to our audience for your time, your energy, your attention. Have the most amazing day. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye for now.
Bye.